Good afternoon, and thank you for listening to 99.1 WIUX LP Bloomington. I'm Connor,
I'm Gavin.
and you're listening to GAVCON 5. And today we have a special guest with us, Mayor of Bloomington, John Hamilton. Would you like to introduce yourself real fast?
Well, thanks. It's nice to be with you both. Thanks for welcoming me to your studios and your show. I look forward to talking about Bloomington and what's going on here.
Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Absolutely. Good. How long you been doing this show now?
It's our second semester.
Yeah, almost a full year now. 'Cause
Nice.
We're basically done with the semester at this point.
Nice.
This is probably our biggest interview. So it's very monumental.
We're very experiencust now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You
We've
got
been
it.
building up to
No
this.
problem.
Yeah.
You got it. That's good.
Monumental day for GAVCON 5.
This is going to get us sent to New York City to be a radio show host there, or San Francisco.
Well, congratulations. I think
Yeah.
it's great to keep giving people sources of news and
Yeah.
input, and thanks for doing it for our city.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So our first question, and I'm sure you've been asked this a lot. You recently decided to, or at least announced that you're not running for re-election. So kind of what drove that decision? Because it caught a lot of us by surprise, myself included. I was thinking you were going to run again, and so when you didn't, I was pretty surprised by that.
Well, thanks for asking. Yeah, it was a hard decision. It's not easy. I love the job. It's a great privilege to serve. Every day is different and interesting, and I feel really engaged in trying to help the community move forward. So on the one hand, there's that kind of idea of, gosh, there's 100 things still to do that are underway and that I think are important for the city. On the other hand, I think an 8-year, 2 terms is a good length of time, and part of what I do, I kind of went back and thought about why I ran for mayor. I didn't run for mayor to be the mayor. I ran for mayor to do things as mayor that I thought were important for the city, and on that list, I really feel like a lot of it I've moved forward. Now, of course, most stuff doesn't really end. I mean, I guess you open a switchyard park, that's open and that kind of thing. But most of these are long-term projects. But I felt like I did the things that I really wanted to do, to come in as mayor and raise the bar and push the city to do a lot of things. And, it's not, I won't talk this long, don't worry, not all the time, but it's not, it's probably not random that most governors and the presidents and most executive positions have kind of a two-term, 8-year rhythm to them. And that rhythm kind of in the end just kind of felt right to me, like, that's a good 8 years, and really worked very hard and really proud of a lot of stuff we did, and turn the page, let somebody else do it. So
Yeah. Seems like a respectable decision.
Yeah.
Kind of like
It was hard.
George Washington going back to the farm.
Right.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
This is definitely on the same level as
Not to like
starting.
not to make a weird comparison, but like
No, but you don't. I mean, politicians should run for office to do things.
Yeah.
And then do the best you can for as long, whatever. I'm not saying there's a perfect time for. Of course, there's different views of that. But then, then move on, do something else, let somebody else do it. So it felt right that way to me.
yeah.
Is there any concern that the people who might come after you won't take the city in a direction that you were hoping for?
Well, sure. There's always, democracies can change directions, different emphases. I'm very proud of kind of the overall direction of Bloomington and where we're going. So I do care about that. And so, as the campaign activates for mayor and for city council, because there's going to be a bunch of change on city council too, kind of automatically by redistricting, and then some people who aren't running. As that happens, I'm going to be listening to what they talk about. What do they want to? What are they going to fight for? What are they going to work for in the city? And I hope it'll be. I hope it'll be consistent generally, but you never know. There might be some differences, and that's why we have elections. So that's okay.
Yeah. Mayor Hamilton, you have a long list of accomplishments during your administration since you took office in January 2016. I was wondering if you could give just a few highlights of some of these? I know you have a long on your website.
Well, we'll make a big list. Look,
Hamilton administration highlights. It's 11 pages, but
11
that's a long list of highlights.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Can we boil it down a little? Well, look, cities are complicated things, so it's not unusual that when I think about what we've been doing, it's got a big range of stuff. When I came into office, for example, Lake Monroe, the water quality was starting to bump up against some federal safety limits. We hadn't yet, but we were moving the wrong direction. So it was like, whoa, we gotta get on top of this water quality issue, because that's kind of a fundamental thing. We had, in the first few months, I was in a fire truck that stalled out on the way to a call, and so we had really infrastructure issues of equipment and basic stuff like that. But really, the most, I guess, to me, the biggest stuff that I've felt really wanting to focus on were jobs in the economy. Bloomington in our area has traditionally been kind of a low-wage part of the state. And Indiana's not a high-wage state overall in the country. That's been a huge challenge for us. Is we're a manufacturing state, but our wages have been lower than the national average, lower than the state average. So thinking about good jobs, and I'm really proud that we've made a lot of progress on that. I think we recently were just among 10 or 11 counties in the state that had average weekly wages of $1,000 or more. Now that's moving us to a level that we hadn't been before. So that's really big. And good wages make so many good things happen. I mean, it just helps households succeed. So that area is one. I'll come back and talk about digital in terms of the economy too. But so that one area of jobs in the economy, and things like growing businesses here and growing wages. Second was housing. I've worked in housing a lot of my life, affordable housing, and we weren't doing enough on housing, affordable housing. I didn't think in the city we had. I think as I looked in the 6 years before I came in, we'd really identified 50 affordable units that had been supported by the city. Well, as I sit here today, we're at about 1,400 affordable units in the last 6 years. So we just really, dramatically increased the focus on affordable housing, which is still, it's a huge issue still, but we've made a lot of progress on that. Public education, the mayor doesn't run the schools. I don't sit on the school board, but I really care about them. I'm really proud that we've had 3 successful school referendums and that our community has supported to improve our public schools, K through 12. And then probably there's kind of a catch-all area, I guess, in a way that's just the quality of life. Are we making Bloomington a fun, vibrant, interesting, safe place to live? And from public safety investments, where we're the only city in the state that's got a nationally accredited police department and a top-ranked fire department, and the only city in the state. And that's kind of cool that the most progressive city has kind of, in a way, we're very progressive and strong public safety investments. I mentioned the new park. That was a huge deal, $35 million new park, Switchyard Park. Have you guys been to Switchyard Park?
I have. I ride down the Beeline.
Oh, yeah.
And the first time I saw Switchyard Park, I was like, this is crazy. Like because last year I don't think I had been down there. I think it was like when I first moved in like August this year. Saw it and I was like, how did I ever miss this?
Well, it's new, and
Yeah.
it's a huge thing for the south and the southwest side of the city and the whole region. And so that's really fun. That took 4 mayors really to get that from start to finish, but I got to be there to put the money on the table and do the final design and get that done. So that kind of thing, or the Trades District and the Mill. I don't know if you've been to that, but that's the state's fastest growing co-work space, 350 members now. There's students and workers, remote workers and home workers and others who do that. So, and then the trails, that we've got, and increasing our tree canopy. And we just again got the 8th year in a row where we got a perfect score on the Human Rights Index for LGBTQ friendliness as a city. And so just, kind of quality of life stuff. So, yeah, it's 11 pages of a list. That's a big one. But the last thing I'll say that I'm really happy about, and I worked really a long time on this and wasn't sure it was going to work, was trying to make sure that every household in Bloomington got gigabit speed fiber internet access. And that's being built right now. A private company is bringing $50 million of investment to build the fiber network through the whole city, ubiquitous, cover every place, and will be a competitor so that you can get gigabit speed up and down from any household. And we have the best digital equity program in the country, I think. And people haven't focused on this yet, but with that digital network, we're going to make every family in the city that has a kid in free and reduced lunch, like a poor family at school, or if they're on Social Security disability, or if they're on food stamps, or if they're on welfare, or if they're living in public housing, are all going to get essentially free, really good internet for their home.
Wow.
So that the kids and the family can access the 21st century. So I'm really proud of those things.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, internet access, it's something you kind of take for granted, I feel like.
Yeah.
But it is obviously very important.
You don't think about it until you don't have it.
Yeah.
Well, like on campus, it's very good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of places in our city where it's not that good and not that reliable, and it's not this. We have kind of the legacy system in America. Don't get me going and all that stuff. But the cable TV and the phone company kind of split up the access, and neither of them has the right incentives to improve it. What's different about this new digital high-speed fiber network is after an introductory period where there'll be one internet service provider, the whole network's going to be available to anybody who wants to use it. So any internet service provider. It's kind of like public roads. Like, FedEx and UPS don't have to build their own roads to compete with the Postal Service. They use the same roads. So that's the idea of digital access too, so that you can have competition that can really make sure over the 10, 20, 30 years more that we have really good, affordable, competitive services.
Nice.
Right. What do you think are some of the more difficult parts of being the mayor of Bloomington? Because there's obviously a lot of good things you just listed off. So what are some of the things that didn't go so well or that you think are not quite as fun?
Well, look, it's always a privilege to get to serve. I think, let's see, a couple things maybe. One, we're a very progressive city, but we're in a very conservative state legislature. And sometimes those bang up against each other. So from small or rifle shot kind of things like we wanted to ban plastic bags 10 years ago before I got in, and the state said, no, you can't ban plastic bags. We're going to make that illegal. Or when I came in, we wanted to pass what's called inclusionary zoning, which means if you're a builder of housing and you're building a few or more units, a significant housing development, we would say, fine, but you got to build some affordable units along with all the market rate units. And the state came in and said, that's illegal. We're not going to let you do that. So that can be frustrating. And then, even on very dramatic things like we can't do anything to control guns, basically. There's a state law that says I have to allow guns in the parks and at the swimming pools and in City Hall. And, we can't stop anybody from having a gun in our 4th of July parade or whatever. So that's really frustrating and scary, frankly, because it's really important to be able to manage that. So that's one issue, just being, we have a very, very conservative, reactionary state legislature, or for example, that they prohibited abortion. From my perspective, that's terrible for our community, for our economy, for our quality of life. So we have to deal with that. One of the interesting things that's challenging in elected office is you represent everybody, right? And that's what you're supposed to do, and that's what I do. Not everybody gets as involved as everybody else. So sometimes the system can tilt toward people who have better access or more time or, more incentive to get involved for various ways. And making sure that you hear all the voices is really a challenge, including, I'm really mayor now, but I should be thinking about how do I represent the interests of future Bloomingtonians who aren't here yet. Like, what are they going to want in Bloomington, and how do we make sure it works for them? And so that's always a challenge to figure out how do you incorporate that into what you do.
That's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. And do you think that the challenge of trying to represent people who maybe don't have time or aren't as engaged for whatever reason is more difficult in a college town versus one that's not a college town?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know if I've thought about it exactly that way. I mean, I do. There's a sense, right, that students make up half the population of Bloomington.
Yeah.
But there's definitely an awareness that for the undergraduate students anyway, a lot of them are just here for a few years and then they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting what that does politically. I mean, some students get super involved in politics and it's great, and they, in city politics, local politics and all. But most do not and don't really pay that much attention to it, and I totally get it. But it probably means that voice is underheard just by the numbers,
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's the university and the issues of the university are very present. I have a quarterly town gown meeting with leadership of IU and leadership of the city, and we kind of talk about issues. So there's a lot of collaboration. But I do think, you're both students. Do you think more about city government than the average student probably?
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I think a lot of people, it's just not on their radar much,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Now, I will say, I was in a class yesterday. I actually lectured at a class, and I said, there is this secret, which is if the students all decided to vote, you can run city government.
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough of you. so
Yeah, that's
just
true.
not many of you vote. So, get out there and vote more.
Yeah.
No, I've definitely noticed that there. I think the precinct with the fraternities and sororities on frat row, there's 2 people that voted in the last municipal election.
If
And
they all just banded together.
They could.
I know they could.
Kind of scary, I will tell you.
It was a very close election then too. So if more than 2 people voted, 30, the result could have changed.
Yeah. No, I we try to do as good a job as we can, welcoming students, and we've been talking about IU. Do you have a message from the mayor? Now, I will confess, I don't think most freshmen really care about hearing a message from the mayor when they show up at IU. I get that.
No, I don't think I did either.
Yeah,
I don't know if that existed.
And I get it. But you're part of the city, and
Yeah.
the vast majority of students live outside campus, right? And
Yeah.
they're part of the city, and you make the city. It's exciting every year when 8,000 or 9,000 new people come in, and 20-something, 40,000 old people, people who've been here before return, and the energy level and the creativity. I learn new hairstyles. I learn new, new fashion styles, and I certainly learn new ways of getting around town. I see all these new kinds of weird contraptions that move people around, so it's interesting.
You grew up in Bloomington as well? You were born in Bloomington?
I was born in Bloomington, and I actually lived here and in Evansville and in Indianapolis. So I've lived here 4 times. Born here, I went to grade school here, I went to law school here, and then I came back 25 years ago and have lived here ever since. Yeah.
What do you think the biggest changes overall have been in Bloomington?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would, one big change is we really did used to be a manufacturing city. We built refrigerators, we built radios, we built televisions, we built elevators, of course, stone industry. So there's a real, that kind of cutter and town gown stuff, there's a real industrial part of Bloomington. That shifted. I sometimes remind people we built the very first color television in America right here in Bloomington.
Yeah.
We also built the very last color television in America right here in Bloomington. So that's changed. Now we have other big manufacturers like Cook and Catalent and Boston Scientific nearby, and Baxter, and the hospital, and those kinds of things, and of course the university, the biggest employer. But I think that change from a manufacturing city to now kind of more cutting edge life sciences, info, new tech stuff, healthcare has been a big change. Of course, we've got more people. A lot more people live here. But it still feels like it's got the charm and the beauty and the quirkiness of a cool, artsy, beautiful, creative place.
Yeah, it's cool. It's funny, I feel like watching Breaking Away. I've seen that movie probably 5-6 times. It's
Yeah.
that's my idea.
You're only getting started, Kevin. Got to keep going. No.
Yeah, I'll probably see it way more. But
you're a bicyclist too, right?
yeah. Well, it's
All
kind of like the window into what was Bloomington like in like the
Yeah.
70s, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny to think about.
Well, am I allowed to ask? What surprised? Am I allowed to ask questions like what
Yeah,
surprised
sure.
you when
Go
you
ahead.
came to Bloomington, or what did you like or not like, or what what wasn't what you expected?
Well, my freshman year, I don't think I ventured off campus
Is that right?
much.
Yeah.
I didn't have a car or
Uh-huh.
a bike, so
Uh-huh.
I took the bus or walked everywhere. And so I didn't really go off of campus a ton, but now this year, I think one of the surprises is like the bike lanes. Like some of them are really, really nice,
Yeah.
and especially the protected bike lane on 7th Street.
You like that 7 line?
I do. That's really, really good.
I'm really. That was a bicentennial gift.
Ooh.
When the city turned 200 in 2018, I asked, and the council gave a $10 million bond to the future, and we focused on trees and trails, and that was one of the trails that we
Okay.
built that we thought would be good. So I'm glad the gift is well received. That's
Yeah, I
good.
like that one. But then other bike lanes
Mm-hmm.
are not as good.
Yeah,
And
Ooh.
yeah,
you
and
feel
then,
it,
and then some roads just don't have one, and it feels
Right.
like they should have them.
right?
So I think that was a surprise, like where the bike infrastructure is in the city, and like where it's at a higher standard.
Where
than
it's not
others.
and where it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel like just the urbanness of Bloomington, like some parts, like the downtown area and stuff. It feels like you're not in Indiana, like just like in a small town. It feels like you're kind of in like a big city, depending on like where, like some blocks of it. I feel like I
Especially the
wasn't.
square. I think
Yeah,
that really feels like a big city,
I mean maybe not big city,
Well,
but
okay.
it's just like I
at least a medium
don't know how to
size.
describe it. Yeah, just like the urban environment.
And is that pleasant?
Yeah,
Or- yeah.
It's a good surprise. Like
Yeah. You're from a bigger city.
I didn't really spend, too much. Like I'm from St. Louis, but wasn't like
You
spending
didn't
too
hang
much
out in
time.
downtown St. Louis all the time.
No,
Well, that's interesting. I do think one of the advantages of Bloomington is we have a lot of the really great quality of life of a small city, community where it's not, we don't have tough traffic really when you compare it to a lot of places, and you can get across town. It's easy to get to your grocery or your doctor or your school or whatever. On the other hand, we also have 200 restaurants and lots of entertainment going on all the time, and kind of some of the amenities of a big city, which IU hugely helps with. Plus all the sports and all that entertainment, as well as great parks and all. But it's all pretty compact. It's
Yeah.
not too hard to get to.
Yeah,
you
kind
ride
of.
your bike everywhere.
Yeah.
You can kind of going off that. I mean, I spent a lot of my time in Noblesville and Fishers because I went to high school in Fishers, but
Yeah.
lived in Noblesville. So coming here, the city's about the same size
Yeah.
as Fishers, but it feels bigger because like the downtown is a lot more built up than most parts of Fishers are, which is all just spread out.
Kind of a little more suburban style,
Yeah,
and
it's
they
very
work
similar.
on that, right? So those cities, but Bloomington. I once read a book that was called "Small, Gritty, and Green," kind of America's future in small industrial Midwest cities, and the bones of the city are really good. We have great square streets, kind
Yeah.
of good blocks,
Yeah.
walkable. You got all the good infrastructure of an old industrial city with sewers and sidewalks and electricity. It's kind of built like a city, right?
Yeah.
Not like a suburb, but it's also small enough that you can do a lot of really good things with it. So now, like the bike paths you mentioned, that's a big plan for us, is to continue to expand those protected, safe-feeling bike lanes. So we got the B line running north-south. We got the 7 line running east-west. But we really need to expand that network, right, to more places, as well as the bus system, which is an amazing bus system for a city our size. And we just put, I didn't mention that, but we just put millions of dollars annually. We're adding to the bus system to be able to take it up a notch. So that'll be good too.
I mean the whole grid thing. I think, is it because Bloomington was settled, or I guess partly settled before cars were extremely popular? I mean, is that?
No, you're right. Cities, the pattern of developing cities. So Bloomington was founded in 1818, so that was a long time ago,
Yeah.
and it It was kind of plotted out and planned and grew. And right, so older cities before cars were the dominant kind of way of thinking were built in a different way. And then we have, of course, some neighborhoods, which you may not hang out a lot in, that are kind of more suburban, single-family housing only, built with cul-de-sacs and curvy roads because everybody wanted to not have a busy street and everybody wanted to live at the end of a cul-de-sac. They thought would be really cool. And I think that's been a terrible thing for the way cities have developed over time. And suburbs around core cities, often that's how they grew up, right? You know, they take an old 40 or 120 acre farm field and turn it into cul-de-sacs. Yeah. And so it makes it hard to walk or bike or to have mixed, stuff going on. So that's a really great asset for Bloomington to have, and we try to build on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is interesting to think about urban planning and like that kind of those topics.
So I don't know if you noticed, but like the old hospital site, which is just southwest of downtown, they built IU and IU Health built a $500 million new complex, and we bought the old one, and it's getting torn down, and it's 24 acres. And what we're doing is we're regridding the streets. I mean, we're spending a lot of money to put in kind of the old style grid neighborhoods because that's what really works. Even though it can be a little more expensive at first, but it really creates an opportunity over time to get that scale of walking and biking and just kind of feeling like a comfortable neighborhood,
Yeah.
for everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody's part of it.
I think we looked at was there like that master plan that was released? Yeah.
It's called Hopewell now, the neighborhood. So it's going to be hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000 units of housing will go in there, and it's going to be a great place for people to live. It's going to be on what we think will be a new bus rapid transit line that'll run east-west in the city, and you're just 5 minutes from downtown and right down up from Switchyard Park. So it'll be a really cool new neighborhood.
Cool.
Nice.
When you graduate, you might want to move there. Okay.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see how far along it is in 2.5-ish years. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
It's for the future Bloomingtonians.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. That's really true, though. Like, Bloomington's, we got to keep changing and evolving. And who is going to decide to move here, right? Who's going to live here? And how do we make sure it's a welcoming place, it's a diverse place? Most people move because of jobs, right? So what are the jobs going to be here? They also may move because of quality of life, because maybe more people will be working remotely. We're seeing some of that already, where people move from Texas or California or Florida or even Mexico or South America. They're moving and they remote work here because it's great quality of life. But how do you make your city welcoming and work for people of the future? That's a very valuable thing, because if you're not appealing to new people, that's not a good sign, probably.
Yeah. I remember the actor Jesse Eisenberg moved to Bloomington.
Yeah, he lived here for a while.
I did not know that. I don't know who that is.
He was in like The Social Network. He played Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Squid and the Whale, and he married a local girl, and he lived here for a while. I've seen him. He's been great. He supports a lot of cool stuff here. But yeah, you want to be a place where people want to be. There's a phrase that I heard when I came into the office that was, you worry a little bit that Bloomington could become a great city for students and for retirees, which it is.
Yeah.
But it can't be just that, right? You got to make sure you've got families and job and kind of the new economy bringing that vitality into, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And we're going to take a quick break so our audience can think about that a little bit. And then we'll get back with plenty more questions for Mayor John Hamilton. Thanks for listening, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to 99.1 WIUX LP Bloomington. I'm Connor.
I'm Gavin.
And you're still listening to GAVCON 5, and we still have our special guest, Mayor John Hamilton, with us. So we got plenty more questions loaded up, so you want to get started, Gavin?
Yeah. So this might be a little bit too too hard hitting for.
I'll hit the
But-
doors if it gets too weird. No,
All right.
whatever. You can ask me anything.
So the topic of upzoning in Bloomington,
Mhm.
kind of controversial, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember seeing yard signs that were like, Mayor Hamilton.
I'm so sorry you noticed
We
those.
didn't,
No.
we didn't elect you to destroy the neighborhoods.
Right.
And I was like, I was kind of shocked seeing those sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's ultimately like residents that don't want, more housing in their neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you, my first reaction to that sign was, well, I'm fine with that because I didn't run to destroy your neighborhood either. I mean, we're all just working to try to make the city better. But so this is a really interesting topic. It kind of refers back a little bit to what we were talking about with housing, affordable housing, and welcoming new people to town. And it's a huge issue all across the country. I mean, almost every city is dealing with this. For example, in California, where we have a sibling city in Palo Alto, which is kind of cool. But I was out there a few weeks ago, and they actually have a law in California that says if you don't dramatically increase the density of your neighborhoods, the state will take over zoning and like outlaw your zoning controls.
Wow.
I mean, it's like huge because they're facing such pressures to help people be able to afford homes and places to live in a city. So Bloomington we're not there, but we can see the future. And one of the challenges is, look, I live in Elm Heights, so I'm in one of these old neighborhoods where some of those signs are actually.
Yeah.
And I get it. And I live in a single family house, and there's some of those near me, but there's also apartment buildings, and there's a duplex across the street, and there's duplex just 2 doors down, and there's about 700 duplexes or quad or multiplexes where it's like 2 houses together or 3 units together, 700 or so in our city. And what upzoning means is basically trying to help increase the opportunity for more people to live in what are traditionally maybe more restricted single-family neighborhoods. It's always a balance. Look, I totally get it that we want to have, and I love beautiful neighborhoods, but I think it's a balance between that and recognizing that if you don't allow more people to appropriately live in some of these places, they're not going to be able to afford to live in Bloomington, and they can't buy a house, and the houses are getting more and more expensive. So it's a good debate, and it's an important debate, and it's not like there's one right and one wrong answer. I think but upzoning is basically about, you remember when we talked about cities designed for cars?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of neighborhoods were designed for single-family homes only. And a lot of that was actually for not very good reasons. Some of it was racism, and some of it was classism. Like all we want living around us is people like us who can buy a big house and live, and we like that neighborhood. I kind of get it, but that's not really what a city is. I mean, cities were fun and are fun when you got a mix of people. And so those kind of homogenous neighborhoods, upzoning tries to deal with that, and it's complicated, and people don't like change all the time, but that's what that's about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think building off that a little bit, I think in early 2021 there was a huge debate over allowing duplexes to be built in the city.
Yeah.
So what was it like being the mayor for something as contentious as that, and even other maybe less contentious things?
Yeah, look, democracies are fine. I was just reading a book. If you go back in history, and democracies are pretty raucous, and we have arguments and close votes on all kinds of really important stuff. And then kind of in hindsight, we forget that, and we're like, oh, well, of course we have Medicare. That's great, even though we forget. Like, it was this huge fight, and like people were saying America is going to be destroyed if we have Medicare or Social Security. Oh, yeah, Social Security, of course. Well, no, it was like we have these huge fights, and then we move on, So I kind of look at it that way, and I believe Bloomington will continue to evolve our housing patterns and strategies. We had a big fight 5 years ago about what we call accessory dwelling units. They're called granny flats, or like being able to put a little unit on your own property. And people thought that would destroy Bloomington, and it would make it be a disaster, and everybody would be adding these little garages and stuff. Well, we've had like a dozen of them, and it's fine. And I think plexes, again, we have 700 of them, But there's a fear that if we have 20 more, that it's going to really wreck our neighborhoods, and I just don't think it will.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good debate, it's a good discussion, and we approved. The city council on a close vote approved some plexes, but limited them. And I think over time we'll see how they work. And my expectation is they'll work fine and they'll grow. Now, if it proves wrong and they're a disaster, then they won't grow. But I think sometimes people just get a little histrionic about it or exaggerated, and that happens in politics. I get it, but it doesn't stress me out too much.
Okay,
it's okay.
People use the word like NIMBY, like NIMBYism.
Yeah.
Not in my backyard. NIMBY is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And not looking at you. A lot of the fear is what will undergraduates do in our neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And of course, students live all over our city, and you got to behave. If you don't behave, we'll come crack down if you're too noisy or you don't put your trash out or whatever. But you're residents like everybody, and I actually think when people really look at the neighborhoods they like, they actually are more diverse than they realize, and it's really important that a young family age 30 with kids can live in town, and be able to afford a house and live here and build equity, and that's getting harder and harder because they're so expensive. So maybe we need row houses, townhomes, duplexes. They can be cheaper than to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that about students too, but in the neighborhoods I've been in where students and non-students live together, I haven't really heard of anyone disliking the other. Like, the students don't really care who lives next to them. And the non-students are like, oh, yeah, there's just students over there. They're pretty nice. Like, you should go talk to them or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all humans, I think.
Yeah.
We're Bloomingtonians. It's cool.
Yeah. Until you meet people from the other groups, though, it is easy to be scared about what they're like.
Yeah, well, like in my block, we have a block party every year that invites everybody, and it's fun. And a lot of us are old timers who've been there for 25 years. But then there's new people who just got to the neighborhood, and that's great, And we share ideas and recipes and stuff, That's it.
Let's see. As going off of something you said earlier about like student involvement and how there's some groups that aren't necessarily as involved in city politics. Do you think it's important for students to get involved in Bloomington politics?
Well, I do. I mean, I'm a politician. I like politics. I think it's really important to make democracy work, and democracy only works when we get involved. I understand that, for a lot of students, they come to Bloomington and they kind of view it as where they're going to be for college and not for the rest of their lives, and so they maybe get less involved in city government. But at the very least, trying to make sure students register to vote and participate in national, state, and local elections is important. I was just talking to a student yesterday who was complaining about how hard it is to vote, though. Like, I tried to vote at the Union, and then they wouldn't let me vote there, and I had to go somewhere else. And so I do. It's unfortunate that, from my perspective, maybe not be yours, but the Republican Party makes it too hard to vote. We should have vote centers where you can go to any polling place and vote. Just make it easy. There's all kinds of ways we could make it easier to register to vote the day of voting and things like that. So voting's really important. To the extent that you're interested in government, I would say for the years you're here in Bloomington, we have interns in our office and in City Hall, and county government does too. And we have campaigns. All my campaigns, we've had wonderful student leaders, getting involved and learning all about campaigning. And it's a great way to get into politics if you want to while you're here as a student, graduate student, whatever. So I do, I'm optimistic about America because I think the generations coming up are idealistic and they have good goals for America. But if you don't make government work for you, then you can't put those goals into place. So I do think it's really important.
And do you think, I think that's a good point, but do you think that some of the responsibility also falls on the elected officials to engage students? Or is it kind of like a dialogue back and forth? It's not that students have to do X, Y, and Z. It's that both people need to do things.
Sure. I mean, that's why I'm on this station, because it's a student, it's an IU station, and you guys invited me. I'm like, yeah, that's great. I get to talk about what's going on in the city, encourage that. all of us elected officials, city council members, mayor, city clerk, county officials, et cetera, should try to reach out to all our constituents, right? A bunch of whom are IU students. It is probably, there's that kind of special town gown thing that means we have to maybe work a little harder at it. And but I do fundraisers for the IU Democrats. That's my team. So but others do help with IU Republicans, and I think that's really good. And again, getting people involved in campaigns directly. We have about 50 boards and commissions in the city, and I try to help make sure we welcome students, recruit students to be on those boards and commissions while they're here, which is also another way to get involved.
Yeah, I know several students that are on some boards and commissions, including the Parking Commission and then the Environmental Commission, which I'm also on.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Good.
Yeah, there's several graduate and undergraduate students that are on.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's your city, so help make it better. And I would say, look, like on that upzoning we were talking about, the student voice and the young person voice was really important, because it kind of was raising their hand, saying, hey, we want to live here too, and we want to be able to live downtown, and not just in dorms, but in units. And it's, houses are really expensive, and how can we improve that? That voice was really important in that debate, and it actually is the reason we won some upzoning, I think, because of the voice of the under 40, basically, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Changing the subject a little bit. I was wondering if you had any big surprises working in municipal government, also kind of related. Are there any misconceptions about what a mayor does?
Well, let's see. I will say this. I didn't know how much I would talk about parking as a mayor. I mean, I ran for mayor on education and jobs and housing and digital equity and quality of life. And then it's like, gosh, I spend a lot of time thinking about parking, which kind of goes back to this whole thing, how important cars are for how cities got built and how we manage them. And my only veto actually was creating the parking commission. No offense, but I thought we already have a Pike Ped commission and a traffic commission. Do we need a parking commission too? Can't we just combine them into a transportation commission or something? But anyway, that was surprising. I was surprised that our lake water was not the standard it should be. I was surprised that we hadn't annexed any territory for 12 years. I didn't know that. Mm. I was surprised, and it shows you we just a lot of stuff we don't know. I was surprised that we had the lowest local tax rate of anybody around us. Even though we're the most progressive city, we had the lower than Owen County, Lawrence County, Brown County, Martin County, Morgan County, and others. And I was like, and we actually need to do some things, so we've actually increased that. So we're kind of in the middle now, but that was surprising. I don't, in terms of surprise about what mayors do, it's a wonderful job where your every day's different, and I'm responsible for the police and fire department, for the clean water, safe water that you get, for the housing, public housing, for the transit system, for the park system, for the streets, and I'm responsible for the potholes, and the sidewalks, right. And the the economic development and planning and all that. So it's really interesting and fun. I'm kind of a government nerd a little bit. I really believe in government. I think it's a spectacular thing we humans have invented, is democracy and self-government, and it belongs to us, and there's nobody to blame but us if it doesn't give us what we want. So let's try to do our best to make sure government helps deliver the kind of communities we want to be in.
Cool.
And before you were mayor, you worked for the Department of Environmental Management,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So how was that? What was that like, working for the state government versus the city government?
Yeah, I worked for 10 years or so in state government in a few different jobs. I loved it. Similarly, I ran two different state departments. One was the environmental department, and then I also ran the kind of the human services, the family and social services department. I guess it proves I'm a government nerd. I just really enjoyed in the Department of Environmental Management. There are 1,000 employees. We were responsible for the whole state, trying to make sure safe water, safe air, safe land. This is an old polluted industrial state, so we'd call it a target-rich environment. There's a lot of problems out there, working with great people. Sometimes people don't realize how many wonderful public employees there are who just spend their whole day trying to make life good for us, whether it's make the parks great or whether it's keep our streets safe or whether it's, keep our water clean. And so it was really rewarding. And at state government, you could get some stuff done. I was really proud of stuff we did up there too. In my lifetime, since the Vietnam War and Watergate, the trust of government has declined a lot. And I get it, because there are ways I don't trust government too sometimes, and I don't agree with it. But it's so important to continue to remember that this is our government. It belongs to us. It reflects us. It does what we tell it to do. And if we don't like what it's doing, then let's change it, And so being part of state government, I felt good trying to help make that happen too.
Have you ever seen the show Parks and Recreation?
I've seen some of it. I haven't seen all of it, but I know a little bit. Snope, and it's kind of fun. Set in Indiana, right?
Yeah, set in Indiana, about a
fictional town somewhere.
Yeah.
The fictional town is based off of Noblesville.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it really?
I think so, because then Eagleton is Carmel.
Oh, really?
It could be like anywhere in Indiana.
There aren't that many other places that are like that, though.
Sure.
It's hilarious. It's good.
But it's all about, like Leslie Knope, she loves, she's a government nerd.
She's naive, right?
Yeah.
And innocent,
Yeah.
but you kind of love it too,
Yeah.
right? That she keeps trying, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of keep trying. Just keep trying. Keep trying.
And then Bloomington makes an appearance in the show, too.
Yeah. They make a lot of references to Indiana stuff. So
I think Bloomington was in West Wing too, a little older show. We made an appearance, and they made fun of us for having different time zones from the rest of the country and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But and they had a train running to to Indianapolis or something, which was different. But government is without it, we don't survive, right? From federal to state to local, and we pick up your sanitation and your recycling. We give you clean water. We give you, safe streets and help you have ability to have a good life and parks and all that stuff. And I just hope people realize how important it is and how we just need to keep embracing it. And if we don't like it, and nobody likes everything a government does, but just fix it, get it better, make tomorrow better than today and make the next year better than this year. And there's a bunch of challenges. We haven't talked about climate change and how important that is for Bloomington and doing the right thing. And we've just put a bunch of money on the table every year to address that. And, these are huge issues every year, and we just got to get into it, roll your sleeves up, make the best choices you can, and keep getting it better.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot to end, so... Thank you very much.
I'm inspired.
Yeah.
Get involved.
Very
Vote.
inspiring.
Thanks for inviting me here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being
Thanks
on
for
the
being
show once again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great to talk about government in Bloomington, being the mayor and all that stuff. So thanks for listening to GAVCON 5, everybody. Tune in next week for our last show of the semester, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Not sure what we're going to do yet, but tune in next week, 2 to 3. Have a good weekend, and see you next week.